I'm Andy Panko, owner of PTIN Financial. Welcome to Retirement Planning Demystified. If you're looking for someone to do your taxes, make sure you don't hire just anyone. There are a lot of unregulated and illegal fly-by-night preparers who pop up during tax return season. And even for some preparers who are duly registered to prepare tax returns, they don't necessarily have any experience, testing, or credentials to be in the business of preparing other people's taxes, which is scary. Stay tuned as I walk through what you need to know in finding a legal and credentialed tax return preparer to do your taxes. And I'll also discuss some free tax return preparation services you may be able to use if you're of a certain age or income level. And be sure to subscribe to this channel and click the little thumbs up like button below this video. But before we start, remember this video is only general explanations and education. It's not specific tax, legal, or investment advice. Before considering acting on anything you see in this video, first consult with your tax, legal, or investment advisor. The most important thing to know about tax return preparers is that it's illegal for someone else to do your taxes for compensation unless that person has what's called a PTIN, or Preparer Tax Identification Number. A PTIN is a number issued to preparers directly from the IRS. However, the hurdle to get a PTIN is shockingly low. In order to obtain a PTIN, there are only a few requirements. The person needs to have a Social Security number, be at least 18 years old, be current on their own tax return filings and tax payments, and not have certain felony convictions. That's it. There are literally zero education, experience, testing, or knowledge requirements to be able to get a PTIN and put yourself out to the world as being in the business of preparing tax returns. It's almost hard to believe. But nonetheless, the important thing is the PTIN tries to at least ensure the person isn't delinquent on their own taxes and hasn't been convicted of certain felonies. If you were shopping around for a tax return preparer, you want to at least make sure that person has a PTIN. So how do you know if someone does? Thankfully, the IRS makes this information publicly available. You can find a link in the notes below to the website for the IRS PTIN Information and the Freedom of Information Act. The site provides links to each state, where each link will download a file of all PTIN holders in that state. Definitely check to see whether the preparer you're considering using is on the list in his or her respective state. Unfortunately, there are lots of illegal tax return preparers who don't have PTINs who pop up for some quick money around tax return time. You want to avoid these people at all costs. Always ask if they have a PTIN, and then also check the IRS site to confirm. While having a PTIN is the absolute bare minimum requirement you want to see a tax return preparer have, remember I said there are zero experience, knowledge, or education requirements to get a PTIN. In other words, basically anyone who's 18, current on their own taxes, and not a convicted felon can get a PTIN. You ideally want to find a preparer who is quote-unquote credentialed. The word credentialed is a formal term used by the IRS to denote a person who has obtained a certain tax-related designation or license that requires a minimum combination of education, experience, and/or testing. The first credential is that of an attorney. As you probably know, in order to become an attorney, a person needs to have attended law school, passed state bar examinations, become duly licensed to practice law, and is required to fulfill a certain amount of continuing education each year. Now, even though lawyers are technically credentialed tax professionals in the eyes of the IRS, most attorneys practically don't know much more about tax returns than the average person. Unless that particular attorney focuses specifically on taxes, he or she isn't going to attempt to be in the business of doing tax returns. In other words, merely finding a lawyer probably isn't going to help much if you're looking for a tax return preparer. The next credential is Certified Public Accountants, or CPAs. In order to become a CPA, the person needs to have a minimum number of years of experience in accounting, pass multiple examinations, become licensed with their respective state boards of accountancy, and fulfill certain amounts of annual continuing education. I think all of us have heard of CPAs before, and usually equate them as persons who do tax returns. However, not all CPAs actually do taxes. Many focus only on corporate accounting and do auditing and financial statement preparation for companies. But nonetheless, many people who do tax returns are CPAs. Another credential you're likely to come across is that of an enrolled agent. Unlike with attorneys or CPAs who are regulated by the states in which they operate, enrolled agents are licensed and overseen directly by the IRS, though they're not actually employees of the IRS. In order to become an IRS enrolled agent, there are 3 exams that need to be passed and ongoing annual continuing education requirements that need to be met. The 4th credential preparer type isn't technically considered credentialed, but it's nonetheless recognized by the IRS as having met certain ongoing education requirements. These are people who are participants in the IRS's annual filing season program, or AFSP. This designation is given to those who meet certain amounts of qualifying tax-related continuing education each year. There are a couple other formal classifications of credential preparers, but you're not very likely to come across them, so I won't get into them in detail. I'm referring to enrolled actuaries and enrolled retirement plan agents. So, how do you go about finding someone who has one of the IRS credentials I just went through? Thankfully, the IRS has a search tool for that. You can find a link to the site in the notes to this video. But in a nutshell, the site lets you search by location, preparer name, and/or credential type. I highly recommend using this tool when searching for a tax return preparer. As I mentioned before, simply having a PTIN doesn't mean the person has any sort of skill or experience in actually doing tax returns. On the other hand, being a credential preparer does. But does that mean all people who are only PTIN holders should be avoided? No, not necessarily. As an example, maybe you have a friend you trust who is bright, has studied a lot about taxes, and is quite capable of doing tax returns well. He or she may be a great choice to do your return. But if you're finding someone you don't already know or weren't personally referred to, I'd recommend searching for a credential preparer, not just someone who has a PTIN. Another important thing to keep in mind is that you may be eligible to get free tax return assistance. The IRS makes available 3 different free assistance programs. First is the Free File program. If you have income below $72,000, the IRS gives free access to commercial tax return preparation software and guidance. While federal returns are free this way, you may have to pay the software companies for your state returns. And also, the $72,000 income limit will change a bit each year going forward. Next is the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, or VITA. This program provides free tax return services to those with income no more than $57,000, the elderly, the disabled, or those with limited proficiency in English. Volunteers in the VITA program undergo IRS-sponsored training to qualify to be preparers for the program. And like with the Free File program, the income limit to qualify for VITA will change a little bit each year. There is also the Tax Counseling for the Elderly, or TCE program. This is similar to VITA in that trained volunteers provide free tax return preparation to qualifying people. To qualify for TCE assistance, you have to be over the age of 60. And finally, AARP has its own free assistance program called Tax Aid, which they make available to persons 50 or older who have low to moderate income. The IRS has a website that provides more info on the first 3 options I discussed. The link is provided in the notes below this video. Similarly, you can find a link to the AARP Tax Aid service in the notes to this video. Free File can be done out of your house since it's just using online software. On the other hand, VITA, TCE, and AARP's tax aid services are done in physical locations where you bring your tax info in and they do your taxes on site, which are typically done in local libraries, schools, community centers, and so forth. Unfortunately, given the ongoing pandemic, many sites are closed or only operating at limited capacity. So, if you qualify and plan on using one of these free services, definitely check out the links in the notes as soon as possible to try to set up an appointment where available. Well, that's it. I hope you found this video helpful. Please be sure to like the video and subscribe to this channel. If you haven't already, subscribe to my monthly newsletter, Retirement Planning Insights, which provides informative retirement planning tips and info. And be sure to join my free Facebook group, Taxes in Retirement, where you can learn all about tax-efficient retirement planning. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.